Ruth had everything a woman could ever desire. As the wife of Chief Mensa, one of the wealthiest and most respected men in her community, her life was filled with luxury. The palace was vast, the lands stretched as far as the eye could see, and her position as the chief's wife granted her influence among the people. Yet, despite all this, something felt incomplete in her heart. Chief Mensa was kind and generous, but his dedication to his duties often left Ruth feeling neglected and lonely. One day, Kuel, the younger brother of Chief Mensa, arrived from a long journey. Unlike his elder brother, Kuel was a man of adventure, always chasing after excitement. He had traveled to distant lands and returned with thrilling stories. His charisma filled every room he entered, and his presence stirred something deep within Ruth. As she watched him laugh with the other men in the courtyard, she felt a flutter of emotions she hadn't experienced in years. Could it be that she was drawn to him? At first, Ruth tried to ignore her feelings. She was a loyal wife, bound by tradition and duty to her husband. But every time Kuel visited the palace, she couldn't help but steal glances in his direction. Kuel, with his charming smile and carefree nature, was everything Chief Mensa was not. He made Ruth feel alive again, and she found herself anticipating his visits more than she should have. The attraction between them was undeniable. During family gatherings, their eyes would meet across the room, and a silent understanding would pass between them. Kuel seemed to sense Ruth's longing, and he too began to linger in her presence. Their conversations grew longer, and their interactions more intimate. Ruth knew it was dangerous, but the excitement was too intoxicating to resist. Ruth tried to distract herself from the growing feelings she had for Kuel, but it was no use. Whenever they were in the same room, her heart would race, and her mind would drift to thoughts she knew were forbidden. Kuel seemed to feel the same, though neither of them dared speak of it. It was during one of the chief's late-night meetings that the line was finally crossed. One evening, as the sun set and the palace grew quiet, Kuel found Ruth in the garden. The air was thick with tension, the kind that had been building between them for weeks. At first, they exchanged polite words, talking about nothing in particular. But as the conversation continued, the space between them seemed to shrink. Kuel reached out, brushing his hand against hers. Ruth knew it was wrong, but in that moment, all sense of duty vanished. She leaned in, and their lips met, sealing the beginning of an affair that would soon spiral out of control. As Ruth returned to her chambers that night, guilt began to creep in. She had betrayed her husband, a man who had given her everything. Though her heart longed for Kuel, her mind was filled with regret. How could she have done something so reckless? How could she allow herself to fall into temptation? But when she saw Kuel the next day, all the guilt seemed to melt away. The thrill of their secret was too strong, and the danger only made it more exciting. Days turned into weeks, and their secret affair continued in stolen moments and whispered conversations. Ruth tried to keep up appearances in front of Chief Mensa, but her heart was divided. She still loved her husband in her own way, but her passion for Kuel consumed her. She knew they were playing with fire, and if their secret ever came to light, it would tear the family apart. Yet, each time she was with Kuel, it felt impossible to stop. Ruth and Kuel continued meeting in secret places around the palace. They would sneak away to the garden at night, or find a quiet corner during the day when no one was watching. Every time they were together, Ruth felt alive, but she also felt the heavy weight of guilt. Chief Mensa had done nothing wrong, yet she was betraying him in the worst way. Despite her guilt, Ruth couldn't pull herself away from Kuel. He was exciting, and being with him felt different from her life with Chief Mensa. Kuel would make her laugh, and when they were together, the world seemed to disappear. Ruth knew it was wrong, but she couldn't help herself. It was as if a part of her that had been sleeping had finally woken up. Soon, the servants in the palace began to notice small things. They would see Ruth and Kuel talking quietly in the halls or spending more time together than usual. Though no one dared speak openly about it, whispers started to spread. The servants were loyal to Chief Mensa, but they also knew how dangerous it was to get involved in matters of the heart, especially when it came to family secrets. Ruth began to feel nervous. She noticed the way some of the servants looked at her, and she worried they might tell the chief. She knew that if Chief Mensa found out about her and Kuel, It would not only hurt him but could ruin the family forever. Yet, despite her fears, Ruth and Kuehl couldn't stay away from each other. They were like moths drawn to a flame, even though they knew it might burn them both in the end. Chief Mensa, unaware of the whispers circulating the palace, noticed something different about Ruth. She seemed distant, her mind often elsewhere when they spoke. When he asked her if something was wrong, Ruth would smile and say she was simply tired. But deep down, Mensa sensed there was more to it. He had always trusted Ruth, but lately, a strange feeling had begun to creep into his heart. To make matters worse, Kuehl's visits had become more frequent. Chief Mensa was happy to see his younger brother spending more time at the palace, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Ruth and Kuehl would often exchange brief glances, and while it seemed innocent on the surface, there was something unsettling about the way they interacted. Ruth did her best to keep things normal with her husband. She would laugh at his jokes, join him for meals, and try to be the loving wife she had always been. But the more time passed, the harder it became to hide her feelings for Kuehl. Her heart was divided between the life she had built with Chief Mensa and the passion she felt for his brother. As rumors continued to swirl among the palace servants, Ruth and Kuehl knew they had to be more careful. The tension in the air grew thicker with each passing day. They would meet in more hidden places and speak in hushed tones, but the fear of being caught only made their secret affair more thrilling. One day, as they met in the garden, Kuehl suggested something risky. "We can't keep sneaking around like this forever," he said, his voice low but urgent. "Maybe we should leave. Go far away where no one will find us." Ruth's heart raced at the idea. The thought of running away with Kuehl was tempting. But then she remembered her life with Chief Mensa, the palace, the wealth, the stability. "And what about the chief?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What will happen to him? To the family?" Kuehl's eyes softened. "I don't want to hurt my brother," he said. "But I also can't stand the thought of losing you. We have to decide what we're going to do before it's too late." Ruth felt torn between two worlds. She knew running away with Kuehl would mean leaving everything behind, including the man who had given her a life of luxury and respect. But her heart had already chosen Kuehl, and with each passing day, it became harder to resist the idea of escaping with him. As time went on, Chief Mensa's suspicion grew. He had noticed Ruth's growing distance and Kuehl's frequent visits. At first, he had brushed off his concerns, thinking they were simply his own worries. But now, he couldn't ignore the signs. He began to watch them more closely, though he never let on what he was thinking. One evening, as he sat in his study, Chief Mensa called in his most trusted servant. "Tell me, have you noticed anything unusual lately?" he asked, his tone calm but firm. The servant hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. He had heard the whispers, but speaking against the chief's wife and brother was dangerous. Finally, he spoke, carefully choosing his words. "There have been rumors, Chief. Some of the servants say that Lady Ruth and Master Kuehl have been spending a lot of time together." Mensa's heart sank. Though he had feared it, hearing the words spoken aloud made it real. His mind raced with questions. Could it be true? Could Ruth, the woman he had trusted and loved, be betraying him with his own brother? The chief knew he had to find out the truth for himself. Chief Mensa decided to take matters into his own hands. He needed to see for himself what was happening between Ruth and Kuehl. One evening, when the palace was quiet, he followed Ruth and Kuehl discreetly. He hid behind a large tree in the garden, where he could see them without being noticed. Ruth and Kuehl met as usual, their voices low but filled with emotion. Chief Mensa watched as they embraced, their closeness undeniable. His heart broke with each passing moment. The trust he had placed in Ruth, the bond he had shared with Kuehl, it was all being shattered before his eyes. Mensa stayed hidden, watching their interaction until they finally parted ways. He felt a mix of anger, sadness, and betrayal. The weight of the truth was almost too much to bear. With a heavy heart, he returned to his chambers, determined to confront Ruth and Kuehl about their secret. The next morning, Chief Mensa called Ruth to his study. His face was stern, and his eyes were filled with a mix of hurt and resolve. Ruth entered, her heart pounding with anxiety. She had tried to prepare for this moment, but nothing could make it easier. "Ruth," Chief Mensa began, his voice firm but calm. "I know what's been going on between you and Kuel." Ruth's face went pale. She tried to find words, but they failed her. "Chief, don't," he interrupted. "I have seen enough. I am deeply hurt by your actions, and I am disappointed in both you and Kuel." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Please, try to understand. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It's just." "Just what?" Mensah demanded. "You have betrayed me in the worst possible way. And now, this scandal threatens to ruin our family." Ruth's heart sank as she listened to Chief Mensah's words. She realized that their secret had caused irreversible damage. The chief's trust was broken, and the future of their family was now uncertain. When Kuel learned of the chief's discovery, he felt a wave of panic. He had always been impulsive, but this situation was different. He knew he had to make a choice, but neither option was easy. Should he leave the palace and go away with Ruth, or stay and face the consequences of their actions? Kuel met with Ruth in their usual secret spot, his face troubled. "Ruth, we can't keep this up," he said. "Chief Mensah knows everything. We have to decide what we're going to do." Ruth was already feeling the weight of their situation. "I can't bear to see the chief hurt. But I also can't imagine leaving you." Kuel's frustration was evident. "We have to choose. If we stay, we will face the wrath of the chief and the royal family. If we leave, we risk everything we know." Ruth was torn between her loyalty to her husband and her love for Kuel. The thought of leaving everything behind was frightening, but staying meant facing the consequences of their betrayal. As Ruth and Kuel struggled with their decision, Chief Mensah took action. He summoned Kuel to his study, his face grim. "Kuel," he said coldly, "you have betrayed me and broken our family. I must ask you to leave the palace immediately." Kuel looked at Mensah with a mix of defiance and regret. "Chief Mensah, I am sorry for what has happened. But Ruth and I are in this together. If you cast me out, I will take her with me." Mensah's eyes narrowed. "You will not take her with you. She will remain here, where she belongs. You are to leave now and never return." Kuel's heart sank, but he knew he had no choice. He had to respect the chief's decision, even though it meant losing Ruth. He left the study with a heavy heart, knowing that their affair had cost him everything. Ruth and Kuel met one last time before Kuel left the palace. The garden, once a place of secret meetings and whispered promises, now felt cold and empty. Ruth's eyes were filled with tears as she faced the man she had come to love so deeply. "I'm sorry, Kuel," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I never wanted it to end like this." Kuel took her hand, his own trembling. "I know, Ruth. I know. But we have to face the consequences of our actions. I hope you find happiness, even if it's not with me." They shared a final, heartfelt embrace before Kuel turned to leave. Ruth watched him walk away, her heart breaking with each step. She knew their love had brought nothing but pain and heartache, and as she returned to the palace, she was filled with a deep sense of loss. With Kuel gone, Chief Mensah faced the aftermath of the scandal. He called a meeting with the palace advisors to address the situation. The advisors, though sympathetic, were concerned about the damage to the royal reputation. "We must find a way to mend the rift caused by this scandal," one advisor suggested. "The people will be watching closely." Mensah nodded, his face set in determination. "We will restore our honor and show that our family can overcome this challenge. Ruth will remain here, and we will work to rebuild trust within the palace and among the people." Chief Mensah's resolve was strong, but he knew that healing would take time. The damage to his heart was deep, and repairing the family's reputation would be a long and difficult process. Ruth found herself isolated within the palace. Her once vibrant life was now overshadowed by the scandal that had rocked the family. Chief Mensah had decided to keep her away from the public eye to avoid further gossip and to focus on repairing the family's image. Days turned into weeks, and Ruth's isolation began to weigh heavily on her. The palace, which had once been a place of comfort, now felt like a prison. The servants and palace staff treated her with a mixture of pity and avoidance, and she rarely saw Chief Mensah, who was busy with his duties. Though she had tried to make amends, Ruth knew she had lost something precious, her place in the palace and the love she once had. She spent her days reflecting on the choices she had made and the consequences they had brought. News of the scandal had spread beyond the palace walls, reaching the people of the kingdom. Whispers of Ruth and Kule's affair circulated among the townspeople, and opinions were divided. Some felt sympathy for Ruth, understanding the complexities of the heart, while others were outraged by the betrayal. Chief Mensa had to address the public to manage the situation. He gave a speech reassuring the people that the royal family was committed to maintaining their honor and dignity. He spoke of the need for unity and understanding during this difficult time. While some were comforted by his words, others remained skeptical. The scandal had tarnished the reputation of the royal family, and it would take time for the people to fully trust them again. After leaving the palace, Kule went into hiding. He traveled to a distant land, seeking a fresh start away from the chaos he had left behind. He settled in a small village where no one knew of his past. Though the new surroundings provided a sense of peace, Kule struggled with the memories of Ruth and the life he had once known. He tried to build a new life for himself, but the weight of his actions lingered. Kule knew that he had to live with the consequences of his decisions and make the best of his new beginning. Back in the palace, Ruth's days were filled with regret. She missed Kule deeply but also felt the sting of her betrayal towards Chief Mensa. She tried to make amends by dedicating herself to her duties and supporting her husband in any way she could. Despite her efforts, the scars of the scandal were still fresh. Chief Mensa remained distant, and the once harmonious palace was now marked by a sense of unease. Ruth could only hope that with time, forgiveness would come, and that she might find a way to heal the wounds she had caused. Chief Mensa began to see the toll the scandal had taken on Ruth. Though he was still hurt and disappointed, he recognized her efforts to make things right. He began to soften his stance, allowing Ruth to participate more in palace activities. One day, as Ruth and Chief Mensa worked together on a charitable project, he spoke to her quietly. "I see that you are trying to make amends, Ruth. It's not easy, and I know the road to forgiveness is long. But I appreciate your efforts." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Chief Mensa. I am truly sorry for everything. I will do everything I can to prove my loyalty." As the palace adjusted to the new order, Chief Mensa and Ruth began to rebuild their relationship. Though it was far from perfect, they were learning to navigate their changed circumstances. Ruth continued to work hard and support her husband, hoping that their bond could be repaired over time. The palace began to return to a semblance of normalcy, but the atmosphere was still tinged with the remnants of the scandal. Chief Mensa and Ruth worked together on various royal projects, trying to mend the broken trust and rebuild their lives. Though it was challenging, Ruth was determined to show her commitment to her marriage and the royal duties. Chief Mensa gradually acknowledged Ruth's efforts. He began to involve her more in public events, allowing her to regain some of her former influence. The palace staff, though still cautious, started to respect Ruth once more as they saw her dedication and remorse. The road to healing was long, but there were small signs of improvement. Ruth found solace in her work and in the quiet moments she spent reflecting on her choices. She knew that she had a long way to go before things could be truly mended, but she was willing to do whatever it took. Her heart still ached for Kule, but she understood the necessity of moving forward and focusing on her responsibilities. One day, an unexpected visitor arrived at the palace. It was Kule, who had come back to see Ruth. He had been living in a distant land, but the memories of his past and the love he still felt for Ruth had brought him back. Ruth was shocked and conflicted. She had tried to move on, but seeing Kule again stirred up old feelings. Kule, too, was uncertain about how to approach Ruth after everything that had happened. He knew that his return might bring more complications, but he hoped to find some resolution. Chief Mensa was wary of Kule's presence but decided to meet with him to hear what he had to say. Kule explained that he had come to apologize for his role in the scandal and to seek closure. He also wanted to make amends and offer any help he could to repair the damage caused. Chief Mensa listened to Kule's apology with a heavy heart. He saw the sincerity in Kule's eyes but was also aware of the pain that had been inflicted. After much thought, Mensa decided to allow Kule to stay for a short period, on the condition that he respected the boundaries set by the palace. Kule agreed, grateful for the chance to make things right. He spent his time helping with various tasks around the palace and trying to prove his remorse. Though he knew he could never fully undo the past, he hoped to find some peace and perhaps even help in the healing process. Ruth was both relieved and anxious about Kule's presence. She appreciated his attempt to make amends but struggled with her own emotions. She knew that seeing Kule again would not solve their problems but could potentially complicate things further. With Kule's return, the palace saw some positive changes. Kule's efforts to contribute to the palace's projects and his genuine apologies began to mend some of the wounds caused by the scandal. Chief Mensa was impressed by Kule's willingness to help and his respectful behavior. Ruth and Kule managed to have a few private conversations, where they discussed their past and the choices they had made. It was a difficult but necessary process. They both acknowledged the mistakes and tried to understand each other's perspectives. Though their relationship could never return to what it once was, there was a sense of closure. They both accepted that their love was part of their past and that they needed to focus on their separate futures. Ruth found some comfort in this understanding, knowing that she had made the effort to face her past honestly. As time passed, Chief Mensa and Ruth continued their efforts to rebuild their relationship. The palace was slowly returning to a state of normalcy, though the shadow of the scandal still lingered. Chief Mensa's public support for Ruth and her involvement in royal duties helped restore some of their lost reputation. Ruth and Kule's interactions became more distant but respectful. Kule eventually prepared to leave the palace once more, having fulfilled his promise to make amends. His departure was bittersweet. While it was painful to say goodbye, it was also a step towards healing and moving on. Chief Mensa and Ruth faced the future with a cautious optimism. They knew their journey was far from over, but they were committed to working through their challenges together. The palace began to feel like home again, with renewed hope for a brighter future. With Kule gone, Ruth and Chief Mensa focused on their new beginning. They worked together to strengthen their bond and improve their relationship. Chief Mensa's trust in Ruth began to rebuild as they collaborated on various projects and spent more time together. Ruth found new purpose in her role as the chief's wife. She dedicated herself to charitable work and supporting the community. Her efforts helped to heal the scars left by the scandal and regain the respect of the palace staff and the people of the kingdom. Though the past could not be erased, Ruth and Chief Mensa looked forward with hope. They understood that their relationship had changed, but they were determined to create a future built on trust and mutual respect. One day, Ruth received a letter from Kule. In it, he revealed that he had found a new purpose and had been involved in helping a community in need. He expressed his gratitude for the chance to make amends and shared his hopes for a peaceful future. Ruth was moved by Kule's words. Though their paths had diverged, she felt a sense of closure and relief. She realized that their love had been a significant part of her life, but it was now time to focus on the present and the future with Chief Mensa. The letter also included a small token, a necklace Kule had kept as a reminder of their time together. Ruth decided to keep it as a symbol of the lessons learned and the journey she had undergone. Chief Mensa and Ruth continued their efforts to rebuild their trust. They attended events together, engaged in public duties, and worked on improving their relationship. The palace once again became a place of warmth and cooperation. As they moved forward, Chief Mensa and Ruth grew closer. They learned to appreciate each other's strengths and supported one another through challenges. Their bond, though different from before, was strengthened by their shared experiences and efforts to overcome the past. Ruth's commitment to her role and Chief Mensa's willingness to forgive and rebuild helped restore their place in the hearts of the people. The palace became a symbol of resilience and recovery, showing that even after facing trials, there was hope for renewal. With time, the palace and its inhabitants adapted to a new era of peace and understanding. Chief Mensa and Ruth's relationship continued to grow stronger, and their public image improved.